Hi everyone and welcome back to Story of the World Highlights. Today we'll be discussing chapter 13. So chapter 13 takes us to France and specifically to the time of Louis IX. So Louis IX was the king of France, and at the time he was a really good king. Everyone really liked him. And his son was the Dauphin. Now if you look very carefully, I made a note for you. Dauphin is a French word, so it might be hard to pronounce, but we pronounce it Dauphin. The end's kind of quiet, like a patim. They're very quiet, so Dauphin. And his son became king at age 4 when his dad suddenly died, making the Dauphin Louis X at age 4. Can you imagine? Now, because he was young, he had lots of advisors helping train him on how to be a king. Most importantly was his advisor, Mazarin. And Mazarin always told him, you are the representative of God on earth. So you should never be challenged. You are the word of God. And this was a big thing that affected Louis X and who he became as an adult and his leadership style. Now, when Mazarin died, Louis said, I'm the representative of God. I don't need any advisors. And he dismissed all his advisors. Everyone was shocked. This hadn't happened in over 100 years in France to not have any advisors. So Louis X went on making his own decisions by himself. Notably, he made Versailles. And Versailles was a giant palace built on a swamp. It says a marsh in the book, and a marsh is just a swamp. And so imagine, not very good ground to build a giant building on. It's not a really good idea, right? Well, it had lots of issues. First, that it was on a swamp, and second, that it took 55 years to build. Can you imagine? 55 years. And during that time, because the conditions in that area were not good for building a castle, many people died. It wasn't great. But when the castle was done, Versailles was the most beautiful, decadent place ever. And Louis went to live there and brought all his noblemen with him. And there he hosted so many parties. And he was all about wearing the finest clothes and jewels. And he made his noblemen spend just as much money as he was. Because to spend a lot of money meant that they were loyal. Why is that? Well, because when they spent all their money and they didn't have any more, they depended on Louis X to stay royal and living in the palace. So he built a dependence on himself. Now you may be thinking, why would the lords and noblemen do that? Well, they were in love with him. They thought that he was the most amazing king ever. He really built that I'm a god image. And so all of the people, the noblemen, were begging to come in and do anything to help dry him after a bath, to help put on his clothes, anything they could do to get closer to him. And by building this fan base, basically, he established himself to be the center of the universe, like the sun. And he called himself the Sun King. He even made his emblem, the symbol that represents him, the sun. And that is why he's nicknamed the Sun King. Now, Louis did other things too in his reign besides live a very fancy, very shiny life. Instead, he also wanted to go and make France bigger and better. And so he wanted to expand France's borders. And when he was doing this in this time, he felt France was number one and he was number one, and he taught his son the same. He told his son, we are the best. We are God. And people should not question us, and they should treat us like gods. And he explained even further to his son that, son, letting people boss you around is not okay. You are the one in charge. You are the representative of God, no one else. And if you give gifts to your people, if you treat them nicely and give them too much, they'll think you are weak. And if anyone tries to take your power, They're stupid. They're probably not that smart anyways, because the ones that seek power are usually the dumbest. And son is listening. Okay, Dad. Now, later on in his life, all those wars to expand France's borders finally caught up with him. And the other members of Europe were angry and trying to stop him from expanding. And so with lots of wars, France finally started to lose some of the land that it had won. Now, that was only the beginning of lots of tragedies in the late life of Louis X. His son, who was the Dauphin, remember, died. And king didn't really care. He said, my son's lazy. He probably wouldn't have been a good king. And so the grandson became the next Dauphin. But the grandson's wife died of measles. And then the grandson fell off a horse and died. So many people are dying. And then before they could find a better replacement for a Dauphin, Louis died. He died of gangrene, which is when all of your tissues in your body start to die and blood can't flow. So he died of that. And the only person left to become king was his sickly little other grandson, who was only 5 years old. He became the new king of France. Wow, what a bunch of tragedies all at once. Now, what did this mean during this time for all the people of France? So the people of France were having to pay so many taxes while King Louis X was king. And so many people died building Versailles. And so many people died in those wars. And so the people of France were not big fans. The people of France were starting to get angry with the royalty because it didn't seem to be caring about them. Keep that in mind as we keep learning about French history. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.